Okay, so picture this. A medical mystery, right? One that stumped scientists for decades. And then, suddenly, a potential breakthrough appears out of left field.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today.
We're talking about a brand new drug for schizophrenia, fresh off its FDA approval, called Cobenfy.
It's a pretty big deal. I mean, we're not just talking about a new drug here. This is a totally new approach to treating schizophrenia, something we haven't really seen before.
Absolutely. This could be a game changer for a condition that's notoriously difficult to treat. And for anyone who's not super familiar with schizophrenia, it's a mental illness that really impacts how people think, feel, and even interact with the world around them.
One of the biggest challenges in treating schizophrenia is that the medications themselves, they often come with a long list of side effects.
Yeah, and I'd imagine those side effects can be pretty rough.
They can be. And sometimes they're so bad that people just stop taking their medication entirely, which, makes managing the condition even harder in the long run.
That makes a lot of sense. So this is where Cobenfy enters the picture.
Right. Cobenfy, it works differently than any other schizophrenia medication out there, and that's why there's so much buzz around it. Up until now, antipsychotic drugs have mainly focused on these things called dopamine receptors in the brain.
Dopamine receptors.
Yeah.
For those of us who didn't take neuroscience in college.
Sure. So basically, these drugs, they try to quiet down or regulate overactive dopamine signaling in the brain because that's thought to be a major contributor to the symptoms of schizophrenia.
Interesting. So Cobenfy, it takes a different approach.
Totally different. Instead of zeroing in on dopamine, it goes after something called cholinergic receptors.
Okay, so different target, different pathway. I'm guessing fewer side effects too.
You got it. It's like taking a detour to avoid a traffic jam. You still get to your destination, but you avoid all that congestion.
I love that analogy. So less traffic, fewer side effects. That's a win-win in my book. But how did scientists even discover this whole cholinergic pathway for treating schizophrenia?
Well, the story takes us back to the 1990s, and it starts with a company called Eli Lilly.
Eli Lilly.
Yeah.
As in the pharmaceutical giant.
The one and only. They were developing this drug called xanomeline. But here's the thing. They weren't looking for a schizophrenia treatment at all. Their focus was on Alzheimer's disease.
Wait, really? So how did they make the leap from Alzheimer's to schizophrenia? Did they accidentally give the drug to the wrong group of patients and have one of those eureka moments?
Not quite, but it was a lucky break, for sure. It was during those Alzheimer's trials that researchers noticed something really interesting. The xanomeline, it seemed to be having some antipsychotic effects in some patients.
You're kidding. They must have been floored.
Right. It was a total surprise. And that's when they realized they might be onto something significant.
So they thought, hey, maybe this Alzheimer's drug could be repurposed for schizophrenia. Did they just drop everything and start testing it for that right away?
Well, not so fast. There was a major roadblock. Side effects.
There are always side effects.
Right. And xanomeline had some pretty rough ones, especially gastrointestinal issues.
Oh no, not fun.
Not fun at all. We're talking nausea, vomiting, the whole 9 yards.
Yikes. I can see why people in those trials might not have been thrilled. So what happened? Did Eli Lilly just scrap the whole thing?
They did. For a while, anyway. They eventually shelved xanomeline, especially since they already had another schizophrenia treatment on the market that was doing well, Zyprexa.
So it seemed like a safe bet at the time.
Exactly. But here's where the story takes another interesting turn. It doesn't end there.
Oh, I love a good plot twist. Someone else swoops in and picks up where they left off.
Exactly. Fast forward to 2012, a company called Karuna Therapeutics decides to roll the dice.
Karuna Therapeutics. I don't think I'm familiar with them.
They're a smaller biotech company, and they licensed this seemingly forgotten drug, xanomeline, from Eli Lilly. And get this, they paid a measly $100,000 for it.
Wait, $100,000? That's chump change in the pharmaceutical world. I guess they figured, what do we got to lose?
Pretty much. But they had a hunch, a theory. They thought, maybe, just maybe, the key to unlocking xanomeline's potential wasn't about changing the drug itself, but changing how it was delivered.
Interesting. You mean like finding a way to get it directly to the brain so those side effects wouldn't be as bad?
You're catching on. Exactly. It's like the brain has this exclusive club, right? And the blood-brain barrier, that's the bouncer.
And that bouncer, they don't let just anyone in.
Nope. Their job is to keep out anything that looks suspicious, anything that could cause trouble. And unfortunately, with those early trials, xanomeline, it got past the bouncer with no problem, side effects and all.
So Karuna had to figure out how to get xanomeline past the velvet rope, so to speak. but without causing a ruckus this time.
You got it. And they found a pretty clever way to do it. They paired xanomeline with another drug called trospium chloride. Now, this trospium chloride is interesting because it can't get past the blood-brain barrier at
So
all.
it's like the opposite of xanomeline in that way.
Exactly. Think of it like this. They attached this big, bulky ankle monitor to xanomeline.
Okay, I'm picturing it. So xanomeline can still do its thing where it's needed, but it can't wander off and cause trouble elsewhere.
Precisely.
That is seriously ingenious. So this combo, this dynamic duo, that's what we now know as Cobenfy.
Bingo. And after years of research, tons of clinical trials, the FDA finally gave Cobenfy the green light just a few weeks ago.
That's incredible. What a journey. But, we have to talk about the elephant in the room a little bit, right? The potential downsides. Because every drug has them. So what's the catch with Cobenfy?
It's definitely smart to be cautious. I mean, the early trials, they're looking really promising, but it's still early days. We need more long-term data to really understand Cobenfy's safety profile.
Makes sense.
That being said, though, the side effects that we've seen so far, generally milder than the ones associated with the more traditional antipsychotics.
So less nausea, less vomiting than with xanomeline on its own.
Exactly.
That's definitely a good thing. But what about this whole new pathway thing? What makes that such a big deal for people who have schizophrenia?
Well, it opens up a lot of possibilities for people who haven't responded well to the existing treatments out there. Imagine you've been struggling with schizophrenia for years, you've tried all sorts of medications, nothing seems to work, or the side effects are just too much to handle.
Yeah, I can only imagine how defeating that must feel.
Right. It's like being trapped in this maze with no way out.
And then Cobenfy comes along. It's like you said, a totally different route.
A new path that might lead to some relief where other paths have failed. That's the hope, anyway.
And hope can be a really powerful thing, especially when it comes to something as complex and as challenging as schizophrenia. But Cobenfy, it's not just about managing symptoms, is it? I was reading that it might actually be able to help with some of the cognitive impairments that people with schizophrenia often experience.
That's right. Schizophrenia doesn't just impact thoughts and perceptions. It can also make it really difficult to think clearly, to concentrate, even just to remember things.
It's like trying to have a conversation with someone while they're blasting music in your ear.
Exactly. It's incredibly frustrating and just debilitating.
And right now, there aren't a lot of great options for dealing with those cognitive symptoms, are there?
Not really. No.
So how does Cobenfy fit into all of this?
Well, here's where it gets really exciting. Remember those cholinergic receptors that Cobenfy targets?
Yeah.
Well, they play a role in a bunch of different brain functions. Attention, memory, learning. So by targeting this pathway, Cobenfy just might be able to improve these cognitive abilities in people who have schizophrenia.
So you're talking about actually improving someone's ability to think clearly, their ability to focus, to remember things.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's life-changing. Can you give me an example of what that might look like in someone's everyday life?
Sure. Imagine someone who loves to read, but because of their schizophrenia, they haven't been able to get through an entire book in years because they just can't concentrate. Or someone who wants to work, they want to have a job, but they struggle to stay focused on even simple tasks. Cobenfy could potentially help these individuals regain those abilities, allowing them to participate more fully in their own lives and in the world around them.
It's like they've been given the keys to a car that they thought they'd never be able to drive again. That feeling of freedom, of possibility.
It really is. And it's not just about individual empowerment either. Think about the ripple effect.
Yeah.
Someone who can think more clearly, who can remember things more easily, they're going to have a much easier time holding down a job.
Oh, absolutely.
Maintaining relationships,
Oh.
just navigating the world around them.
It's like Cobenfy is not just treating a disease, it's removing barriers,
Yeah.
right? Opening up possibilities for people to live these richer, more fulfilling lives.
Exactly. And if you think about the bigger picture, this discovery, it has the potential to completely change the landscape of schizophrenia research.
Really? How so?
Well, for decades, scientists, they've been so focused on dopamine. And while that's been important, don't get me wrong, but Cobenfy's success with this cholinergic system, it's like shining a spotlight on a whole new avenue for exploration.
So we're potentially talking about a domino effect here. Like Cobenfy is just the beginning. It could lead to even more groundbreaking discoveries, even more effective treatments down the line.
It's definitely a possibility. I mean, we're in uncharted territory, really. But that's what makes this so exciting.
It really is. It's like that feeling of embarking on an adventure, you know? You have no idea what you're going to find.
Right.
But the potential rewards, they're enormous.
Absolutely. And that sense of hope that belief that things can get better, it's incredibly powerful. Schizophrenia is tough. There's no way around it,
It really is.
both for the people who live with it every day and for their loved ones. And Cobenfy, it's like this beacon of hope, a reason to believe that the future of schizophrenia treatment is bright.
It really feels that way. It's a testament to the power of scientific curiosity,
Oh, absolutely.
perseverance, and sometimes a little bit of luck along the way.
And we can't forget the human element, too. All those researchers, clinicians, advocates, the people who live with schizophrenia every day, all the people who've dedicated themselves to finding better treatments, to improving lives. This victory is for them.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. It's a good reminder that even when we're faced with these huge challenges, we can't underestimate the power of human ingenuity, the power of compassion. So, listener, if you're feeling inspired by this deep dive, and I know I am, we want to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Head over to our social media, share your thoughts. Let's keep this conversation going. What are your hopes for the future of mental health treatment? Until next time, keep those brain waves buzzing.